Did you know the Philippines were targeted by invaders? Here are 6 reasons why. To understand why the Philippines became such a magnet for foreign powers, one must look not merely at the obvious fact of colonialism, but at the deeper structural reasons that made these 7,641 islands so irresistible across so many centuries. This is a story of geography, commerce, religion, ambition, and the relentless logic of empire. It is also, ultimately, a story of a people who endured all of it and still emerged with a distinct and resilient identity. Here are 6 foundational reasons why the Philippines became one of history's most invaded territories. Reason 1. An unbeatable geographic position. If you were to design a country whose location alone would guarantee it would be coveted by every maritime power in history, you might draw something that looks exactly like the Philippines. Situated at the crossroads of the South China Sea, the Pacific Ocean, and the broader Southeast Asian maritime world, the Philippine archipelago sits at a geographic sweet spot that made it an irreplaceable piece on the board of global strategy for centuries. This is a story of geography, commerce, religion, ambition, and the relentless logic of empire. It is also, ultimately, a story of a people who endured all of it and still emerged with a distinct and resilient identity. The islands form a natural bridge between East Asia, China, Japan, Korea, and the rest of maritime Southeast Asia, the Malay Peninsula, the Indonesian islands, and the trade routes leading toward India and the Middle East. Any power that controlled the Philippines could effectively influence the flow of people, goods, and military force across one of the world's most important maritime corridors. Spain recognized this from the moment Legazpi established a permanent settlement in Cebu in 1565. The Spanish wanted their colony to serve as a gateway for trade with China and Japan, and Manila's position at the mouth of Manila Bay made it an almost perfect harbor, naturally protected, centrally located, and within sailing distance of virtually every major trading partner in the region. The galleon trade that developed, which ferried Chinese silk and porcelain across the Pacific to Acapulco in exchange for Mexican silver, would not have been possible without the Philippines as its Asian anchor. Centuries later, the same logic applied. When the United States took the Philippines from Spain in 1898, American strategists were quite explicit. The islands represented a forward base in Asia, a coaling station for naval vessels, and a foothold from which American commercial interests could project power into the booming Chinese market. Alfred Thayer Mahan, whose theories of sea power shaped American strategic thinking at the time, could hardly have imagined a more perfectly placed piece of real estate. Japan, too, understood this in 1941. When Imperial Japan launched its assault on the Philippines just one day after attacking Pearl Harbor, it was seizing a geographic prize that would anchor its southern resource area strategy, cutting off American power projection into the Pacific while securing supply lines to the oil fields and raw materials it needed to sustain its war machine. Geography, in every era, made the Philippines too valuable to ignore.
Reason 2. The gateway to the spice trade. Before petroleum, before microchips, before financial derivatives, there were spices. In the 15th and 16th centuries, control of the spice trade was the equivalent of controlling the global energy supply. Nutmeg, cloves, pepper, and cinnamon commanded extraordinary prices in European markets and could make a merchant fabulously wealthy almost overnight. The Spice Islands, the Maluku archipelago in what is now Indonesia, were the primary source, and the Philippines sat directly on the routes leading to them. When Ferdinand Magellan sailed into Philippine waters in 1521, he was not looking for the Philippines specifically, he was looking for a western route to the Spice Islands. The Philippines were, in a sense, discovered as a byproduct of Europe's desperate hunger for spices. The Spanish initially hoped the archipelago itself might be another spice island, and were disappointed to find that the local soil and climate were not suited to the cash crops they craved. Nevertheless, the Philippines remained indispensable as a way station and control point on the path to those riches. Even after Portugal and later the Dutch effectively foreclosed Spanish access to the Moluccas, Spain maintained its presence in the Philippines, a telling indicator that the islands had intrinsic value beyond merely being a stepping stone. Manila became something more interesting than a spice depot. It became the hub of a remarkable trans-Pacific trade network that connected Asia, the Americas, and Europe in what was arguably the world's first genuinely global economy. Chinese junks arrived in Manila by the dozens each year, laden with silk, porcelain, and other luxury goods. These were then loaded onto the great Manila galleons and shipped east across the Pacific to Acapulco, where the goods were carried overland to Veracruz and shipped onward to Spain. The Philippines did not produce the spices, but it produced something arguably more valuable. It produced the meeting point. And any power that controlled the meeting point controlled the terms of trade for an entire ocean. Reason 3. Fertile land, timber, and natural wealth. While the spice trade brought foreign powers to the Philippine doorstep, the island's own natural resources gave them reason to stay. The Philippine archipelago is blessed with remarkable natural wealth, fertile volcanic soil capable of producing rice, sugar, tobacco, and indigo in enormous quantities, vast tropical forests filled with high-quality hardwoods, gold deposits in regions like Benguet and Paracal, and coastal waters teeming with marine life. The Spanish, initially disappointed at the absence of silver mines like those in Mexico and Peru, eventually recognized the value of what they did have. The forests of the Philippines proved critical to the galleon trade in an unexpected way. The islands provided the timber for the galleons themselves. Philippine hardwoods, far superior to anything available in the Americas for shipbuilding purposes, were harvested on an enormous scale to construct and repair the vessels that carried silver across the Pacific. The indigenous Polo y Servicio system forced local Filipino men to provide compulsory labor for these logging operations, disrupting local agricultural communities and inflicting significant environmental damage on Philippine forests. By the 18th century, Spain had introduced a tobacco monopoly in the Philippines, forcing farmers in northern Luzon to grow and sell their entire tobacco harvest to the colonial government at artificially low prices. The monopoly became one of the few reliably profitable ventures the Spanish extracted from the colony. Later, sugar and indigo plantations transformed large tracts of land and established agricultural export patterns that would persist well into the American period. The Americans, when they took over in 1898, brought with them a sophisticated understanding of resource extraction dressed up in the language of development. U.S. commercial interests established timber, mining, and agricultural enterprises across the islands, developing the country's natural wealth to serve American industrial and commercial needs. Gold, which had been worked by Filipinos for centuries before any European arrived, was finally extracted in large quantities during the American period, vindicating the original Spanish hope, albeit 400 years too late for Spain. The Philippines was, in short, not merely a strategic position, it was a land of genuine material abundance, and that abundance attracted everyone from Chinese traders in the 10th century to American corporations in the 20th.
Reason 4. Manila as the hub of early globalization. There's a tendency to think of globalization as a modern phenomenon, but Manila in the 16th and 17th centuries was arguably the world's first truly global city, a place where East and West, the Old World and the New, met and mingled in a daily commercial frenzy. This made Manila, and by extension the entire Philippine archipelago, a prize of incomprehensible value to any power that understood what was at stake. The Manila-Acapulco galleon trade, which ran for almost 250 years, from 1565 to 1815, was the backbone of this early global economy. Chinese silk and porcelain flowed into Manila from the dozens of junks that arrived each year from southern China. Mexican and Peruvian silver flowed back across the Pacific in the holds of the galleons. In Manila itself, merchants, sailors, and traders from China, Japan, Southeast Asia, Portugal, Mexico, and Spain lived side by side in a complex, often volatile cosmopolitan society. This commercial importance made Manila a target not just for Spain's competitors in the spice trade, but for anyone seeking to disrupt or capture Spanish commercial power. The British actually captured and occupied Manila from 1762 to 1764 during the 7 Years' War, a global conflict that played out on Philippine soil as just one theater among many. The Dutch, the British, and even Chinese raiders and Japanese pirates at various points threatened the city, recognizing that whoever held Manila held a toll booth on the most profitable trade route in the world. The commercial centrality of the Philippines also attracted the world's most entrepreneurial minds. The Chinese community in Manila, known as the Sanglis, became so economically dominant that the Spanish alternately depended on them and feared them, occasionally massacring them in numbers that reached into the tens of thousands, only to find they could not maintain the colony's economy without them. This grim cycle repeated itself multiple times and stands as one of the darker chapters in the island's history under Spanish rule. The lesson is clear. You cannot build the world's most important trading hub without making yourself a target for everyone who wants a piece of it.